my goodness, they were fabulous. They are superstars. You guys are awesome. So thank you, ladies, beautiful girls, for singing this morning. It was just so wonderful. So I am Joanne Adelberg. I am a family advocate and genetic counselor here at Howard University, and one of the organizers of this event. I'm just so happy that you're here today, and you heard this beautiful song. But I am also just so happy to be here. But I'm here right now to introduce our keynote speaker, Mardrequs Harris. He'll be giving the keynote today. Oh, there he is. There he is. I was like looking. I was like, ooh. Mardrequs Harris, he is giving the keynote that is entitled Transforming the South, Addressing Stigma and Its Impact on HIV in the South. Mardrequs is a Tennessee native. Anyone else here from Tennessee? Woo! And he is currently residing in Atlanta, Georgia. Woohoo, Atlanta, okay. He is a graduate of Tennessee State with a public health background and an emphasis on HIV/AIDS that spans more than a decade. Mardrequs serves as the Director of Community Investments for the Southern AIDS Coalition and oversees Sachs Compass portfolio. He has experience that spans across the clinical research, community-based organizations, state government, and national affiliations. His greatest joy comes from doing regional work that focuses specifically on the Southern U.S., amplifying the resilience that comes with being a Southerner. In addition to doing the work, he is also passionate about Mardrequs is a current student at the University of Alabama at Birmingham and pursuing a master's in arts in education and community health. So, a warm welcome for Mardrequs Harris.
All. So just a couple of updates to that introduction. I am proud and so excited to say that I am the Deputy Director for the Southern AIDS Coalition. I am also excited to say that I am not only a graduate of Tennessee State University, but I am no longer a current student. I am a graduate of the University of Alabama at Birmingham. So I have to make sure to update my bio for ICS next year. So thank you very, very much. So this morning I am the keynote. Wow, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do to transform the South, but I really want to place some challenges in the room to kind of reframe the way we do research and the way we study and the way we address stigma. Close to the end, I'm going to pose 3 questions where we can frame the way we build future studies and future interventions around a little bit about slavery, and then how that same map and those same places look as it pertains to the HIV epidemic in the South. So just a few things, point out a few things. We'll get a break. So according to these slides, so again, I'm Mardrequs Harris, Deputy Director for the Southern AIDS Coalition. I just want to start out a little bit, our vision at SAC, and I should know it by heart, but I talk about it in passing and in study, but we envision a South where every person has access to high quality health care and essential support services, free from stigma and discrimination. also envision a South where every person understands their risk for STI transmission, HIV and STI transmission, receives routine screenings, and has access to a full range of prevention, interventions, and harm reduction. We intentionally call out the prevention piece because we cannot end the epidemic and get to zero without focusing on care and prevention. So, the compass, vision, and goals. I am here. It says I'm the Gilead keynote speaker. I'm not employed by Gilead Pharmaceuticals. However, I am a coordinating center for their Gilead Compass Initiative, one of many partners that do the work to really change the narrative around HIV stigma across the southern United States. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, too. Some of those goals that we want to do through the Compass Initiative is really to improve access of quality health care services for people living with HIV in the South, increase local leadership and advocacy in the South, and to change the public perception of HIV and AIDS in the South. Those Compass Initiative partners that they do, so I'm getting all this in so you can really know, like, oh, they really do work. They're not just up here making up stuff, and then we're going to get to the good part, okay? So we do that through partners at Emory University School of Public Health. We have the University of Houston School of Social Work, Wake Forest School of Divinity, us, the Southern AIDS Coalition, and we have our partners GLAD, who also do that. They help with that goal 3 of changing the perception, the Southern HIV Impact Fund, which is an entity of AIDS United, and we do our evaluation through ETR. So, because we are a Compass Coordinating Center, we also have a mission for how we do our stigma work. So the mission of the Southern AIDS Coalition Compass Coordinating Center is to reduce HIV-related stigma in the South, and we do it through grants, training, and leadership, and empowering individuals impacted by HIV in order to maximize collective impact on HIV/AIDS in the region. So this, pointing this out, this is why I'm here to talk about, right? So I got the preliminaries out the way. So this is HIV.gov's definition of stigma. So HIV stigma refers to irrational and negative attitudes, behaviors, and judgments toward people living with and or at risk of HIV. It can negatively affect the health and well-being of people living with HIV by discouraging some individuals from learning their HIV status, accessing treatment, or staying in care. Stigma can also affect those at risk for HIV by discouraging them from seeking HIV prevention tools, testing, and from openly talking about to their sex partners about safer sex options. Options is the key word. What we want to highlight there is negative attitudes. We want to talk about irrational. We want to talk about judgments. Those are the main components that keep us in these types of rooms having to have conferences on stigma, having to have conversations on how we change narratives, having to have conversations on what is it new that we need to do. What do we need to change? How do we revisit? So these are the things I wanted to point out in this. So these are some quotes. There was a study done by Duke University, Susan Reef and Carolyn McAllister, which used to be over the Southern HIV/AIDS Initiative Strategy. And I wanted to share some quotes that came from some of those studies. So, fear of rejection. I mean, I've known a couple of people to have HIV, and they don't like to talk about it because you say people start to cut you off. It's as if the disease, you're going to catch it just by talking to somebody. So it's really difficult for me to kind of read this sideways, but I know I need to stay in the camera so people can see me. So I'm trying to figure this thing out, okay? So basically, these are quotes. The other one, this is your pastor, your first lady, your nurse, whatever, and you go there for sanctuary because church is where you're supposed to go for love and for sanctuary, for counseling or whatever you need. And you pour it out, and the person says, well, you know, you are going to hell. I ended up knowing everybody in the pharmacy because I was there every 30 days getting a prescription filled. And you're wondering, do they know what this is for? And, of course, there's a tag of information all about HIV and PrEP. PrEP is also a part of an HIV regimen that's used for HIV meds. So you're looking, and they know you in church. They know you in the post office. They know you in the grocery store. They know, it's like, you know my information. Are you going to get it out, and is someone going to tell? For example, I'm from a small little town called Summerville, Tennessee. West Tennessee. West Tennessee, you say? Think Memphis. Memphis is its own state within the state, right? But I'm about 25 minutes down the road. If I chose to go to the health department in my hometown, I can guarantee you 99.9% of the people in the health department. I will know little Mardrequs, will know my mother, or will know my aunt and uncle who pastored the largest black Pentecostal church in that city. So you see how that already creates, we're talking ecology now, you see how that creates that model of me being able to go into a place and feel confident about my care, feel confident to be able to share what I'm going through, feel confident to be able to talk openly and freely about sexuality, potential risk that may be posed, you know, and risk is a word that we need to talk about more too, but those type of things. So the people in these why would they go to a doctor's office? Why would they share these things with their faith practitioners? So, the bar before the bars. Has anybody ever heard of the bar before the bars? Because as practitioners, we focus on the HIV care continuum. And we label people as hard to reach. We label people as not interested in their health care. We label people as having other things that they feel is more important, but that bar before the bar, if we would deal with that, the continuum itself would change. That bar before the bar encompasses things like racism, poverty, misogyny, homophobia, violence, shame, stigma, homelessness, classism. All of these things are the issues that people wake up to every single day. These are the things that Southerners in particular have to grapple with to determine, how do I want to move throughout this day? How will I navigate throughout this day? What can I share that will not bring harm to me? What can I share that will not have me having to sleep in a car or on a couch tomorrow or tonight? What can I share without me having to choose to have a chosen family over a biological family, because my biological family may not understand based on where we come from. The bar before the bar. So stigma and other social determinants influence the HIV continuum before a diagnosis is even made. Think about that for a minute, right? We talk about behaviors. We talk about who you slept with. We talk about the tools you used to use drugs. Talk about needles. We talk about where you do these places, the types of people who do these things. But we don't talk about the lived experiences and the lives that people live and the horrors they experience at the expense of being able to be their authentic selves. If we dealt with the bars before the bar, imagine what this HIV care continuum looks like. We talk about 90, 90, 90, and in some places they have 95, 95, 95 of where we want to reach. Can we do that with a bar or bars that exist not silently, they exist out loud. They exist in politics. They exist in our churches. They exist on our campuses. They exist in our biological families. They exist in our friend groups. So before we can talk about viral suppression, adherence to a medication, being tested, understanding your risk for the acquisition of HIV, we have to talk about real life issues that people are dealing with. Think about the depth of our country, how far our country reaches. And 49% of HIV-related deaths happen in the southern U.S. Why is that? Why do these numbers persist year after year, over and over? And we come to conferences like this because most of us get it. But how do we change the narrative and shift the dialogue and change the conversation, the topic of conversation, so everybody else get it? The people that are passing laws get it. The people that are standing in pulpits that are supposed to be preaching love, destiny, finding out who you are, what you are to contribute to the world, but instead they're preaching hate. They're preaching damnation. They're preaching hell. Stigma kills, not HIV, not AIDS. I don't know if that was me or not, but that's true. And I must be talking real good. So, highest burden county of the EHE is targeting the highest burden counties of new HIV infections. 48% of those counties are in the U.S. South. And this is by counties, not just states. So it's breaking down what is happening inside the state. 48% of those are in the U.S. South. Right? Keep this part of the map in mind. We're going to move a little further and point out some other issues that are going to also talk to that bar against the bar. So, when we talk among this community, you can be here today and gone today because you chose to be honest, because you chose to disclose. This study was conducted, the State of HIV Stigma was conducted by GLAAD in partnership with the Gilead Compass Initiative, and 80% of Americans agree with criminalizing non-disclosure of HIV status. If you look closer at the model, it's actually 81% believe that if you do not disclose when sex is involved, you should be criminalized. Now, are there one-offs to where people are intentionally malicious? Yes. We're not negating that. But there are far more situations where intentionality did not exist in those situations. Fear existed. Rejection existed. The unknown sometimes existed. And we know you can disclose your status today, break up tomorrow, and they tell the police that they knew nothing when y'all been together for 5 years. Okay, I have a amen. You know what I mean? So when we look at things like that, that also speaks to how we view HIV. That speaks to the necessity of taking the education outside of beautiful spaces, necessary spaces like this, into the places that are hardest hit, into the places that really need to know and really need to understand that there is an epidemic, yes, but there is science, there is education, there is an ever-evolving and changing landscape, and what you saw in videos back in the 80s and early 90s is not the same today. HIV criminalization, this is just a map, and I'm not going to try to read it, but it points out there are certain states, at least 6 of them. If you are charged with HIV criminalization, you are labeled as a sex offender. There was a friend of mine who used to present all the time on criminalization and living in the state of Louisiana. He was charged with HIV criminalization, and in that state during the time, I don't know if it's changed or not, I hope, they literally put sex offender in red letters on your license. There is criminalization, and then there is over-criminalization. Because now you're not focusing on an intent to do harm, you're focusing on punishing who you view as deviant. punishing who you view as less than, punishing who you think are menaces to society. The laws on the books do not match the science. The laws on the books do not match where we have come, and we should be screaming from the rooftops every day. We work day in and day out to change and to shift narratives. Everybody that we think needs to get it gets it, except the people that make the laws. Except the people who are supposed to be put in place to protect and serve. We have selective outrage when it comes to HIV and what that looks like and how it shows up. That sounds familiar when it comes to something called skin tone. There's selective outrage that goes back to the bars, before the bar. So, health inequities, right, across the southern United States. That map over there is the far one with the less color. It is the enslaved population in 1860, right? That bottom corner, enslaved population in 1860. The map over here, HIV/AIDS mortality rates by county. You see the area heavily populated. Some may say, oh, I see lots of blue across on the other side of the country. But the lower you go in that color scheme, that is the higher the rates. It is most populated, and red exists the most in that same region where enslavement happened in the 1860s. So we want to talk about today and say yesteryear matters not. Yesteryear's pattern still exists when we look at health disparities, when we look at health inequities, when we look at access, when we look at the ability to access a thing when it's there, but we may not be safe. Were people safe in the 1860s to go and get what they needed? No. They were owned. They were property. They were cattle. They were herded. We get to this time and this where we are now, and slave doesn't exist. Enslavement doesn't exist the same way. But when we look at our medical system, when we look at healthcare, when we look at the expansion of Medicaid, it is the same region that refuses to change language, that refuses to give people options of gender identity, that refuses to give people options of sexual orientation. The same area. So we have to look at the correlations. They say everything is new under the sun. I like to believe everything is new under the sun, but some of that same stuff that was under the sun in 1860 is under the sun in 2023. We have to change the narratives. So, I have 3 questions for us, right? When we talk about this, we have to let humanity lead. We can't always talk about numbers and studies and research and hard to reach. First question, what do we do when people desire and need connection but continuously experience rejection? Pause and think about that. These are questions for us to take back when we start to do more research, when we start to do more recruitment of marginalized communities, when we start to put up studies and we forget to include the folks we're trying to serve, and then we wonder why they don't want to be a part of it. That is stigma within itself, and we have to be held accountable as practitioners for how we stigmatize these communities. The next one, how do we create safe havens and places where folks can be cared for and nurtured versus abused and taken advantage of? Research has abused people throughout the years. How do we shift the narratives and ask different questions to where humanity is the leading force? Humanity is the motivation behind creating these things. Humanity is the reason why we want to make a change. The next one, how do we shift the narrative of stigma and shame to one that's about strength, value, and resilience? How do we do it? What do we do? I am not going to give you an answer. I want you to screenshot it, take a picture of it. I want you to put it on your desk. I want you to make it a part of something you see every day and let it lead you to humanity. We can't end stigma. We can't change narratives around stigma until we put the human before a disease. There's a note I wrote down this morning that I said, we talk about issues, we talk about disease prevalence, we talk about behavioral studies, we talk about surveys and all these types of things, but I personally believe Mardrequs, not the Southern AIDS Coalition, not Gilead Sciences, not anybody that gives me money to do speeches, not anybody that I give grants to. I believe that the epidemic of stigma and the biggest public health crisis is the disregard for humanity. We have to begin conversations about humanity, about dignity, about respect. Am I at 25 minutes? Okay, I'm moving real fast. So, let humanity lead when you build your next intervention, when you create your next program. I'm almost finished. So at the Southern AIDS Coalition, really quickly, because I know people are going to want to know, they're going to say, well, did you say what we do so people can know how to reach us? Yes, so I'm going to close out with that. So at the Southern AIDS Coalition, some of the ways that we try to change the narrative and shift the narratives around stigma is through capacity building trainings, community grants, to where we do small grants of $25,000 for people to create media campaigns, mobilize communities, and do advocacy work to shift narrative around stigma and how stigma is perceived on the local level in their communities. We do collaborative learning and leadership development. We have a thing called Unity Workshop that focuses solely on stigma. It is a 6-week online intervention, and there are stigma scenarios, and it really deals with that internalized stigma. And then we do our Lead Academy, leadership, education, and advocacy development, that is for and by people living with HIV. It was created and designed by people living with HIV, and the people that go through it are people living with HIV, and the facilitators are persons living with HIV, and that is facilitated by a wonderful person on our staff, Marnina Miller, who some of you in this room may know. We do it by our Community Advisory Council. That is letting community lead. We have wonderful ideas, but if they say it's trash, we got to throw it away. Research and collective advocacy, that is another way we do it. So we do studies, we do surveys, we do all those wonderful things to gather information, to make sure we're on the right track, to make sure we're on the right page. I know I was really up there. Did I bring y'all down? Now I'm talking about the stuff. I'll go back to it in a minute. So, one thing I want to talk about Spark. One way that we can particularly change the landscape around stigma is letting folks tell their own stories. We have been so programmed to say, oh, I want you to share your story, but within these parameters, in this box, touch this thing, don't touch that one, say that kind of, sort of, but don't say it too loud, and move past it really quickly. Storytelling. How many of you do advocacy? Been to the Hill. What is the main thing you do when you go into those politicians' office? You get them for 5 minutes and you want to tell the story. Because stories that relate to them cause them to think a little different when they go into the room to pass a vote by their constituents. Not all the time, but it's one of the main components of advocacy. Allowing people to tell their story, convey the mission and vision, illustrate the need and educate, share services provided, elevate personal stories, and you highlight the partners that are doing the work. People need to know, I found a safe space, but when I leave this area, where do I go? We have to create networks. We have to create initiatives where people can know that I am safe, I can be my authentic self. I may not get this need from you. We have to talk about collaboration. To end HIV stigma, collaboration is an important component. Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. You don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the resources. I don't have all the resources. And it has been created, systems has been created for us to fight one another for resources. And in that effort, when we do that, we make the person that hurts from that is the person that needs the services. We have to create bridges. We have to share resources. We have to partner. These are more tips. You can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but until we make real change. until we're intentional, until we deal with the bar before the bar, until we deal with the things that people deal with when they wake up before they can even think about a clinic, think about a diagnosis, think about a condom, think about a disclosure. That is where we start our work. That is how we shift narrative. That is how we turn the tide on stigma. Will stigma ever go away? No, it's going to always persist. But we can sure kick its butt out of HIV work and let that live somewhere else. Thank you.